Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of #SciChat. SciChat, of course, is the weekly video webinar, recorded webinar that we produce, released every Monday, and it's released through the other part of SciChat, which is the Facebook group named SciChat, SciChat, and what that group is a collection of more than 1,000 scientifically minded marketers, so other marketers who are interested in exploring scientific and experimental and data-backed ways to do their job, which is typically marketing or some form of communications. So what we do is every week I release a new video. You're listening to this one this week, which is going to be about marketing automation, and we release those videos on Monday, and then throughout the week we have a discussion about marketing in general, and then that topic specifically. All right. So as I said, I don't know if actually I said I am Dan Zarella, HubSpot's social media scientist. All right, and I call myself a social media scientist because I go to a lot of marketing conferences, I read a lot of marketing books and blogs, and I hear a lot of advice that is, well, for lack of a better word, it's a lot of unicorns and rainbow stuff, and that's what this image here is a very old mosaic, I believe, from Greece, or it could be Etruscan, unicorn, way back in the day. Very, very old history. Unicorns have existed, right? And so that's what we really need to remember when we're talking about unicorns and rainbows is that, yeah, the idea of the unicorn, the image of the unicorn, I'm using as a metaphor, but the problem with unicorns is that in the marketing field, the things that I'm referring to as unicorns actually do exist, and they can endanger your business, right? Meaning, if you believe something is true, but you don't have any either empirical evidence or even anecdotal evidence or experimental data, meaning you believe something is true about marketing, you believe a certain superstition about marketing. I say that marketing automation is bad, right? Because that's this week's topic, marketing automation. And so if you believe that automating your marketing is a bad thing, but you believe that only because some marketing expert, quote unquote, told you that it is. You've never experimented with it. You don't have any data to back that up. You don't have any real experience with it even, just because you've been told, you've been led to believe that it's bad. What could happen is that either A, you can't scale your business just because you're not using automation. You can't reach the amount of people that you need to reach to make your business successful, or you have a competitor who's effectively and intelligently using some form of marketing automation, and they are eating your lunch online. Those things, that belief in that unicorn, that belief in that superstition, while on its face doesn't seem like such a bad idea because, of course, people want to believe marketing is all about being human and being authentic, and, well, automation is robotic, and that's bad. If you believe that, because that sounds good, that's hard to disagree with, that's truthy, right? But if you believe that, there's a very real chance you're putting your business at risk. And so with that, let me get into to the idea of marketing automation more specifically. Now, I love marketing automation. I love the concept of marketing automation. And really, if you think about the history of marketing, at HubSpot, we like to talk about the shift between, from outbound to inbound marketing, or from interruptive marketing to inbound marketing. And of course, there have been many shifts throughout the history of marketing, many changes. But one of the things that hasn't changed a whole lot is the idea that I say marketing is manipulation, but marketing is persuasion, is perhaps a gentler way to put it. It is a trying to get somebody to take a specific action that you'd like them to take, right? And if you take that model and you apply it to a one-on-one sort of interaction, then you're really talking about sales, right? Getting somebody to buy a specific product. And of course, that's related to marketing. But if you start looking at how marketing is different from that, what it is it's about building a brand, building reaching people at a larger scale than just one-to-one, or even one to like a few. Because you can be a good salesperson and be in front of a group of people, right? But marketing is about how do you reach a larger audience, aka the market, right? Because the word marketing means how do you bring a product or service or brand or message to a market, to a large audience. And the best way to do that is through sort of marketing channels at scale. So for the past couple hundred years, it's been about different kinds of mass media, most notably recently television, radio, newspapers, magazines, that sort of thing. With the web, we have a new form of mass media available to us. Right? And what's interesting about that form of mass media is that, yeah, I can make a huge site and have millions of people come to my site and show everybody the same thing. But unlike the other forms of mass media, use television as an example, but they all work. The internet is two-way, or it's addressable, right? Is another way to think about it. So, meaning, if you turn on your television, I, as the television broadcaster, can't tell that it's you turning on the television, right? And you can't tell me as the audience member too much about yourself, right? But as a web user, I can collect a lot of information about who you are, about what you like. You can volunteer a lot of that information, or I can just sort of observe that about you. And I can tailor the experience you have while interacting with my marketing and with my messages to you specifically. Now, there's two ways to do that. And nobody would argue that's a bad thing. That's becoming more human, right? Because if I can go from television where everybody gets the same message, and maybe I winnow it down a little bit based on, what show you're watching. And, if you're watching a show about cars, I'll show you a car ad. But that's sort of ham-handed version of what I'm talking about. With the web, I can get really specific. I can be very human, very targeted, very personal, and I can either do that by hand somehow. I mean, I'm not one-on-one, right? By hand, very slowly, doesn't scale, or I can be automated. I can use, robot essentially, right? A computer to do those sorts of personalizations. I can actually use marketing automation. You can use marketing automation to be more human. And that's really the crux of what I'm talking about here, and why I think that marketing automation is so important and so misunderstood, so maligned, and so valuable to your business. Marketing automation is a tool to make you more human, not less human. Okay? Because if you decide not to ever automate any of your marketing, your only other option is to do everything essentially manually by hand or be purely broadcast. Meaning, and when I say broadcast, I'm sort of being a little vague with the term, but you can either do everything by hand, which will mean you won't be able to reach as many people as you need to, or you can just say the same things to everybody. And that's not very human. That's not very lovable. Right? Marketing automation is a technology, when used best, can make your marketing much more lovable, much more human than non-automated marketing. Okay? And now I'm going to show you some quick screenshots. I'm not going to spend too much time on them because I'm not trying to sell you HubSpot software. But what I want to do is I want to expand your understanding of what marketing automation can be. Now, in previous episodes of SciChat and in my other content that I produce, I've done a lot of discussion about, engaging in the conversation on Twitter, and I decided not to include a lot of those graphs here because if you want to find out, just Google science of Twitter SciChat or science of conversation SciChat, or just flip through some of the previous, things in the Facebook group, and you'll find much more in-depth discussions on this topic. But basically, social media is a two-way channel, meaning if somebody has customer service issues, then you need to answer them, yes. But it's best used sort of as a broadcast channel where you're sending out lots of interesting content, because that's what gets followers and that's what gets retweets. And marketing automation, that's what marketing automation is, or that's one kind of marketing automation, right? Is automating your social media. Some of your social media, at least. Maybe not all of it, but some of it, a good deal of it. And automating it in such a way that it gets the most results possible. So this is what this screenshot shows, is composing a message to be scheduled for later and posted to whatever, social media accounts you want. Again, I'm not trying to sell you on social media, on HubSpot software. Any social media software worth its salt can do this, really. And here's, with the scheduler, right? And again, once you start using automation to make yourself more efficient, you can then become more human at scale, right? Marketing automation like this, where you can take a 10,000-foot view and you can look at all your content that you're scheduling for the whole week, allows you much better control over what you're posting than if you were just sort of ad hoc posting it whenever you came across it. You can be a little more thoughtful, a little more, honestly, human and real. and lovable. We really love that term at HubSpot, lovable. We always talk about making marketing that people love. And one of the key concepts of making marketing that people love at scale, because it needs scale, marketing needs scale to be profitable, uh, is automation. And I'm kind of tired of people being maligning automation just because you know, um, 'cause it's got the word automation in it, and people don't like automatons. I think they sound scary and they're robotic. And then what you're able to do with it, with good marketing automation in social media, for instance, is once I automate a message, I can see who has interacted with it, and I can see that much more easily than I would be if I was just, again, ad hoc posting stuff to social media. And what that means is that now, not only does it make my life easier, my experience of marketing easier, and my ability to be lovable easier, but it allows me actually to understand my audience better and to start getting more personalized and more human with my audience in a way that is much more difficult without automated. And then I can start to measure these things. And again, that's sort of the other side of marketing automation, is that automation makes it easier to do the marketing, but it also makes it easier to measure the marketing. And it is marketing measurement is actually how you produce lovable marketing, right? Because you're not perfect. As a human, you are not perfect, and nobody is. Meaning, everything you do in marketing, every message you make in marketing is not going to be perfect. But if you're automating your marketing and you're measuring your marketing, you can learn what your audience likes, and you can iterate on that, and you can get better at that, and you can do more of that, which makes your marketing more lovable. And that's just what this screenshot shows. It shows, of the message you've automated, how many people have interacted with it, how many contacts have become engaged, and then how many customers you've generated. Just allowing you to take a really human scale, a really human sort of level eye view of how your marketing messages are doing, right? And that's really only possible through well automated marketing. Now, of course, the more common form of marketing automation is typically email. And realistically, that's where a lot of most of marketing automation is happening right now. And that's fine, because really, I use Twitter, I use Facebook, but if I really need to get a message to somebody online, I'm going to use email. Like, email is the sort of the infrastructure behind the whole thing, behind the sort of human interaction, human-powered web. Right? Now, other forms of marketing automation, of course, include things like smart content, meaning you show people the content that they want to see on your website based not on the page that they're on only, but also based on what you know about them. Right? And again, I'm not doing this to sell you HubSpot software, but that's another feature that we can do, and really any other marketing automation package should be able to do that for you. HubSpot's just the most awesome. But when you go back to using marketing automation for email, there's one thing, or there's a couple of things that really jump out about the fact that tell us that you need to be using automation, and start to explain how to use automation. So what this graph here shows is that when I looked at thousands of people sending email, right, to their customers, their contacts, and I broke them into a couple of groups. One group was people who just had one list of email addresses, and they just sort of sent to those email addresses all together in one big list. Versus people who broke their email lists into 2 to say 6 different segments, and they sent email to those lists. The companies that did that segmentation, the companies that used more lists, tended to have higher click-through rates. What this means is that if you treat your entire marketing contacts database as one big amorphous blob and make no effort to understand who they are and how they are different from each other and what they specifically want as opposed to everybody else on your list, then you're going to have a worse engagement rate, a worse click-through rate, a worse response rate than if you made some effort to divide your list into segments based on their activities on your site, their topical interests, and you sent them different content. Okay, and this is one of the things that marketing automation allows you to do a lot more easily than just sort of manual automation. And of course, whenever you're talking about email marketing, you're talking about marketing automation, because unless you're hand emailing thousands of people, you're automating some form of your marketing. Now, at this point, once we're already talking about doing email marketing and you've already accepted the idea of doing email marketing, then really all we're talking about is making your marketing automation smarter. And one of the ways you can do that, and one of the ways in which a marketing automation package that is bigger than email can help you with, is by helping you to understand the people on your contacts list and allowing you to break them down into separate segments so that you can treat them differently and start to send them email based on what they want to get rather than based on what you want to send them. Okay, that's an interesting concept there. So I'm going to repeat it, and we're going to come back to that throughout the presentation. But remember, automation, especially in email, but in general, can help you send messages based on what your recipients, based on what your contacts want to get, not based necessarily or solely on what you want to send them. Another thing that marketing automation helps you do is personalization. Now, there's sort of baseline personalization, and that's this, first name personalization, right? So you send me an email, you know my first name because I've provided it to you, and at some point in the email, typically in the subject line, which is what this graph is about, it says my first name. Hey, Dan, check out this offer. And what this graph shows is that emails that use first name personalization in the subject line tend to have higher click-through rates than emails that do not use the first name personalization in the subject line. And so I think that's sort of table stakes. That's just sort of a baseline for personalization. And it was one of the easier things to look at as far as personalization goes in the data set because, once you get into more complex kinds of personalization, you tend to have fewer people using them because for every business, the more complex personalization, like if you're you sell me jeans, you sell me clothes, right? Like you're a clothing retailer online, and you know my size. So you know my jean size or whatever, and you send me an email that says, "Hey, we got these new, jeans in, 33 or whatever size I am in your brand." That kind of personalization is much more sophisticated, but to produce data, like for me as Dan's Rel, to produce data to show you guys, that sort of thing, it's going to be harder because I'm going to have a much smaller sample set. But there are other forms of more sophisticated first name or personalization, rather, that you can use. Company name personalization is something that's pretty common among B2B companies, only because, that's one of the other, once you ask my first name, you ask my last name, and then maybe you also ask my company name. And I think that the more sophisticated one works better for me because, like, I'm used to companies using and abusing that first name thing, right? Like everybody in the world who knows my name on the internet sends me email says Dan in it in a subject line, but and so ignoring that's not such a big deal just because I get so much of it that says Dan in it, and then just honestly, if you send me an email that says Dan in the subject line and I ignore it, I feel like I'm only ignoring something you sent to me. However, if you stick my company's name in the subject line, I get less of those. Right, because it's a little more sophisticated, but also I feel a little more guilty if I ignore it because now I'm not just ignoring something sent to Dan, I'm ignoring something sent to HubSpot, and I feel like I'm not doing my job, right? So I definitely experiment with first name personalization, especially once you've started to segment out your lists, start doing personalization, and of course this can get even crazier when you start thinking about dynamic content and stuff, as far as sending content to your audience, to your list, based, personalized specifically to them. So for instance, like with HubSpot, we have this HubSpot website grader, and you run a website through, and it gives you a score based on how good your website is, how well your website does inbound marketing. And so if we send you if we know your email or your website address, and we send you an email that's got the web address and then your score in it, that's super awesome because that's not only is that personalized, but it's also really, really targeted, and that's something that only marketing automation can do. And that's where marketing automation starts to make you more human and more personalized, and it starts sending content based on what your people want to receive, and not necessarily what they want to, what you want to send them. Now, this gets tricky because some email software providers will allow you to do different kinds of personalization, but the way they do it, if you mess up typing a character, like they use these weird placeholder characters like 2 square brackets and then a curly bracket and then a pipe and then the keyword you want to insert, or the field you want to insert, and then the same thing but closing, and then if you mess up one of those weird things, and it'll just send like the weird characters to your whole list. That's a bad thing. What our software, and again, I'm not just trying to sell you our software, but a lot of times when I will talk about marketing automation, or other people will talk about marketing automation, when people start to try to criticize marketing automation, especially in the terms of personalization, what one of the criticisms you often hear is that, oh, well, it's so easy to mess up personalization, and then you get these really embarrassing emails with all this gobbledygook in it. It doesn't mean anything, and it makes you look really silly and robotic, and that's bad. Well, but serious marketing automation software won't let you do that. You're selecting from a drop-down. You can't mess it up. It's not. So that one of the major criticisms of marketing automation is that sometimes things will go wrong and you'll look robotic. Software worthwhile software will actually stop you from doing that, right? So rather than, marketing automation giving you more chances to mess up and look like a robot or look like a bad robot, great marketing automation software will actually prevent you from messing up a little more frequently. And then I think one of the most important aspects of applying marketing automation to email is the idea of transactional email. Okay, and what I mean is that the way email marketing used to work, and I'm oversimplifying here, but bear with me for the point of this point. The way email marketing used to work is that I would go to your website and you'd have an email squeeze box, just like a little input box with a subscribe button next to it, and I would give you my email address. And then once a week, once a month, once ever you wanted to, you would send me your newsletter, right? And people could email blast was a term that people would use, and a much maligned term these days. But basically, it was I took an action on your site that resulted in you getting my email address. Whether that was signing up to your newsletter, or maybe I wanted to download an ebook. You sent me the ebook, and then you put me on your email newsletter list, and then you blasted me every once in a while. But I took an action, and then for the most of the email that I got had nothing to do with that action, right? And so what we've done already is presented the idea that based on that action and based on what you know about me about that action, you should be sending me things that you know that I want specifically, right? You should be treating me a little more specifically. You should be segmenting your list, personalizing your email, and you should be sending me email that's more relevant to me based on what you know about me. But if you go a step further and you think that if I'm on your website today and I give you my email address, you as a brand are top of mind. You should send me an email today, preferably right now or within the next couple of minutes. And then tomorrow, you're still as a brand going to be pretty top of mind. Even if I don't come back to your website tomorrow, I was just there yesterday, right? I'm still going to be pretty top of mind. You should maybe think about sending me an email tomorrow. Maybe not tomorrow, if in the next week. And then over the next couple of weeks, if you send me emails, you're still maybe not the number one thing I'm thinking about, but I still remember who you are at least. And that's what this data shows, is that when you look at recency, meaning how recently did I subscribe to your email list, and then you look at the click-through rate, basically the newer subscribers tend to have the higher click-through rates. So if I sign up to your email list, you send me an email today, you're going to get a really high click-through rate because I know who you are, I remember you. If you send me an email in 3 days, you're going to have a little bit lower click-through rate than the first day, but it's going to be much higher than if you send me an email in a month. If you send me an email next week, it's going to be a little bit lower than 2 days from now, but it's going to be a lot higher than 2 months from now, right? So we start to hit on this idea of transactional, meaning email should be a transaction. Good automated email should be a transaction, meaning I've done something on your website and that results in me getting an email, right? So now you're sending email based on my schedule, right? So we've already talked about not sending email just that you want to send, but sending email that I want to get based on what you know about me. But now, based on my activity, you can send me email when I want to get it, not just when you want to send it. And really, the only way to do that at scale, of course, is with automation. So it is unarguably a more lovable thing to do. It is a more human thing to do. And it can only be achieved through automation, through essentially robots. I use the term robots because it's the most hyperbolic term, and it's the word that marketing automation is bad. You should be a human, not a robot. Well, sometimes robots can be more human than human, right? They can help you be more human than human, at least. And this is another example. Instead of looking at email newsletter lists, start looking at lead nurturing campaigns. And lead nurturing drip email is a kind of is a baseline type of transactional email. Meaning, I did something on your website. You kicked off a series of emails, one that gets sent to me one day, and then in 3 days, and in 5 days, and 10 days, or whatever the numbers happen to be. And again, what you find is that the closer the distance in time between the email you're sending me and the action I took that resulted in that email being sent, the higher my click-through rate. So the more transactional your email is, the more responsive your email system is to my actions on your site, the more response you're going to get to me as the person getting the email. So again, we're thinking about sending email based on when I want to get it, not necessarily just on when you want to send it. And then, of course, if we look at unsubscription rate, because I feel like we should always look at unsubscription rate when we're talking about marketing automation, because that is another one of the big fears. People say, oh, if you send too much email, then you're going to get a lot of people unsubscribing. And when you look at, again, that recency, so the number of days since somebody signed up to your email list, and the unsubscription rate, basically unsubscription rate tracks with attention. So the first couple of emails you send, that's when most of the people are going to shake out, right? So the first couple of emails you send to people, that's when most people are going to unsubscribe. It actually tends to get much more rare that if you've sent me 10 emails, it's the 11th one that's going to make me unsubscribe. Or if you've sent me a couple of emails and then you send me an email in 6 months, that one's going to be the one that's going to make me unsubscribe. It's typically going to be the one that you send right away. And in fact, when you look at all email marketing metrics, unsubscription rates tend to track with attention. So any email activity that results in more clicks also tends to result in a higher unsubscription rate. So when you start talking about unsubscription rates and start saying, well, this is going to cause a bump in unsubscribers, you really need to measure that. It's really hard from a big, from a best practice, from a big data, from a general standpoint, to differentiate between a behavior that's going to produce clicks and one that's going to produce a lot of unsubscribes. And a lot of times it's the same behaviors produce both. So when it comes to your list, you really need to pay attention to unsubscription rates. Right, and don't look at, oh, well, I started sending emails on one day after people signed up to my list, and so they get much higher click-through rates than any of the other ones do. See if you're getting more clicks. If you're getting more clicks, great. If you're getting higher unsubscription rates, kind of got to unassume that that's going to happen. But what you need to do is look, okay, well, now if I change that email to 2 days out, how bad is the unsubscription rate there? Or if I change the content of the email, is the unsubscription rate going higher than the other one? And so track trends. Don't just freak out if you see some unsubscriptions. And then sending frequency is one that I think is really important to all discussions of email marketing, but especially marketing automation. Basically, once you're sending, what this graph shows is that the bottom axis there, the horizontal axis, shows number of emails sent per month to a list, and then the vertical axis, the up-down axis, is the click-through rate of that email, or of that list. And what you find is that basically, once you get to, like, say, 4 emails a month, i.e. 1 email a week, there's no huge drop off to the right on that graph. Like, so when you go from 4 emails to 30 emails a month, there's no huge drop off. So for the most part, most people are sending, like big businesses that have, email lists that produce a lot of leads, are sending at least once a week, maybe a little less, mostly more. You don't need to be too shy about experimenting with sending more email, because typically once you start to, build up and launch these more sophisticated marketing automation, you're going to have a lot of activity on your site that's going to be able to trigger more email. And so sometimes you'd be like, we're worried, if we send a whole lot of email, people are going to unsubscribe, blah, 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 stop clicking. That's something you can't just assume is going to happen. Right? That's a superstition. There is no law that says more email is bad. Right? There is no, like, set in stone connection there. So what you need to do is actually test that on your side. Meaning you need to go out, send a little bit more email, and see if your unsubscription rate raises. But again, remember the math behind this. And I always bring this up whenever I talk about frequency. Remember the math that if you start sending twice as much email and your click-through rate goes down by a third, you're still getting more raw clicks. So you need to look at the total net number of clicks you're getting based on how much you've increased or decreased your email frequency. And again, when you look at unsubscription rate, you see that what's interesting here is that it's the infrequent sends that get the most unsubscribes. So if I sign up to your email list and you email me once a year, that's the kind of behavior that gets me to unsubscribe. Right? Because remember the other one, people shake out in the first couple of emails. So if I'm getting your emails and you're emailing me once a week, I'm okay with them. I'm going to keep getting them. It's going to be much more rare that if you've been sending me emails for a month or two and you're sending me once a week, that 10th email is going to be the one that's going to make me unsubscribe. So again, don't just assume that increasing frequency is going to bump unsubscription rate. There is no set in stone reason to think that. It's just a unicorn superstition. And honestly, it's one of the ones where it can endanger the results you get out of your campaign. Because you may be losing clicks, because if you send twice, you might be getting more raw clicks, you might be getting more business. But then additionally, sending more email more frequently allows you more chances to experiment with different kinds of things, which can boost your results across the board beyond just the fact that you're sending more email. And then another thing, if you're focused on sending email blasts, you're going to get stuck into this idea that you need to send email through the business week, mostly because you're going to be sending email when you want to send it, not when people want to get it. And large data set analysis indicates that Saturdays and Sundays actually do really, really well. I get a ton of email during the week, and I don't really read a whole lot of it. On Saturdays and Sundays, on the other hand, I get very little email. So the email that I do get on Saturdays and Sundays, I tend to read and give a lot more attention to that email. So what you need to think about doing is, rather than just say, well, I'm in work Monday through Friday, so that's when I'm going to send email, you really need to start to experiment and think outside the box and start thinking about sending email on your receiver schedule, not just necessarily on yours. And then time of day data, I mean, it does tend to spike earlier in the day. And that's a pretty common thing for email blasts to sort of schedule them to go out first thing in the morning. But again, always experiment with all this kind of stuff because your specific list might be, in fact, a little bit different. So that is the end of this week's SciChat. Again, SciChat is two things really morphed into one. One is what you've just listened to, which is the 30-minute, we call it a webinar, presentation of data about a specific topic every week. Every week the topic is different. But then it's also, and I think more interestingly and more importantly, a community of more than 1,000 scientifically minded marketers who are interested in having a conversation, networking with new people about how to do marketing from a scientific point of view. And so definitely jump on over to Facebook if that's not where you're listening to this, and check out SciChat. I highly recommend it. It is a great community of folks. So thanks everybody for listening, and I look forward to talking to you again next week.